Good morning, and thank you for joining today's webinar from Spec Innovations, Streamlining Requirements Management with Innoslate, a complete guide. My name is Taylor Duffy, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. First, I would like to go over some housekeeping. During the presentation, feel free to send us questions, and we will get them answered in the Q&A part of the webinar. You can also interact with us on LinkedIn through the Innoslate users group or through X using the handle @SpecInnovations. The webinar is being recorded and will be made available to you after the live presentation, so keep an eye out for it in your inbox. Now, I would like to introduce you to our presenter, Spec Innovations President and Founder, Dr. Stephen Dam. Dr. Dam has been involved with research, experiments, operations analysis, software development, systems engineering, and training for more than 40 years. He has also received an Expert Systems Engineering Professional ESEP certification from Incosi. He is currently applying systems engineering techniques to various DoD, DOE, and commercial projects. Feel free to send him any questions through the LinkedIn users group or send him an email to stephen.dam@specinnovations.com. And now I'll hand over the controls to Dr. Dam and we'll get started.
I'll turn my camera on just so everybody see it is a human being and not some bot doing this. So I'm going to turn it off just because of bandwidth issues. Okay, so let's get into this. There we go. So just a little bit briefly, we're going to talk about some of the best practices we've seen. Again, a little bit of, kind of slide views here. We're going to go through and talk about these things, AI features and tips. But then I really want to spend most time actually in live demo. So that'll be today's agenda. And we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. So what's requirements management? I think most of you probably know. I always like to go to the Incosi guides for this kind of thing. The Needs and Requirements Management Guide that came out in 2022. This was the definition they used for it. If you read it, you kind of see, well, it's a lot of things, but it doesn't really include the requirements derivation and analysis that a lot of us do. So it's really more about once you get the requirements, what do you do with it? How do you manage the changes, provide the status, maintain that traceability to other things? So there's other aspects of it. And in fact, those other aspects really are what we mostly do in systems engineering. I often like to say, so systems engineering is all about requirements. It just depends where you are in the life cycle and the phases of the life cycle as to what you're doing with the requirements. Requirements, you probably know, have levels, and oftentimes people start with user needs and work their way down. Other times, it's not unusual to start with a specification, an old specification, or an existing system, and derive those requirements and bring them up to that higher level to make sure they're still meeting the user needs, trace that they meet the user needs, or identify where they don't meet the current user needs. And so that's the combination of things and approaches people take with it. So traceability, again, is something that everybody pushes really hard, and they talk about requirements traceability heavily. But the key is you're tracking the requirements to every piece of information in the system, and those other elements of information are all connected to each other too. And that's why you need an ontology that helps you define what we call the essential elements of information that you need to describe this system. That's what we're looking for. We used to have a term called EEIs. Maybe you've heard that term before. So that's a good way to characterize what we're trying to do for the system. And the key is also, besides knowing what those elements of information are, you also need to know how they're connected to each other. What are those relationships between them? So having that capability is really important. We use something called the lifecycle modeling language as our underlying database schema for Innoslate, which does this for us. It was defined by a group of systems engineers to identify those essential elements of information for the system, and also the programmatic side of it as well. So not just the technical performance measures and things like that, this includes that entire part of what we do in systems engineering and program management. Some of the key classes, particularly for requirements documents, because again, if we're talking about management, we're going to be managing the documents. Now, it's funny because a lot of people say, well, wait, we're doing model-based systems engineering. We don't do documents anymore. Yeah, we do. We still need documentation. Documents happen to be a good form of that information. The problem with most documentation, though, is it's static. It's very difficult to trace and reuse the elements of it. So we have a documents view in Innoslate. The purpose of it is to identify the objects in the database that we're going to capture, again, those essential elements of information about the requirements, and put it in a document-like form. It looks like a document. Even you can even say it's the kind of thing you think it looks is a document, but it isn't. It's not in the classic way we think of documents in Word or PDF. These are objects in a database. We're just having to be visualizing them in a document-like form. So the key classes that we use from LML are the artifact, the statement, and the requirement. Now, the artifacts act as a container. They contain the statements and requirements using a relationship, which we'll talk about in a minute. The statements themselves provide contextual information. You know, things like your headings, your goals and objectives, other things that are just, kind of give you that context of what the requirements are about. And then the requirements themselves are the specific statements of the requirement, and we put those in the description field of the requirement class information. But we also add other metadata, the name, the number, quality factors, all kinds of other things. And you can use, we use labels to do the typing of it. So if you have a safety requirement, you can identify it as with a label, and then that way you can sort and just get just your safety requirements. So again, these are mechanisms that help you work with it as a database tool, but again, in that document-like form. So some of those key relationships, this is something from one of our training classes, by the way. This is a showing within a document. You start with that top level, and we're indicating a systems requirements document might be the place you start. That would be the artifact. The relationship to the statements and requirements is source of or source by. Now, from that, again, that could be a statement or a requirement there in the document. We're showing it just as a requirement. Now then, we show the requirement being decomposed by other requirements. And that's, again, a typical thing you would do. You have a higher level requirement like a user need, and you'd break it down to that next level of document and keep doing that until you had the full set of documentation you want. Now, sometimes your number of requirements get to be very large. In a real problem, you're not going to have even hundreds of requirements. You're going to have thousands to tens of thousands of requirements in a real system. So to do that, you often have to manage it by having different documents. And so oftentimes people will start with a high level, mission user needs document, and then they'll break it down into those next levels, the conceptual and the systems to the application level, to the component level. So again, that's a typical thing you might see. So here we show in the right-hand picture is again that SRD to the requirement. Now the requirement is showing using a refine by refines to another document. So again, AMS means I'm not sure what the specific meaning was, but basically that's in a different document. Okay, it's a different artifact, and in it you're refining the other requirement by this other document. And again, similarly with the B one, so you can see how you could add it to multiple documents this way and have a linkage. So those traceability relationships are all things I'm going to want to walk to be able to know how I get from one document to another document. Now, another trick we use a lot is we will use a mnemonic for the document type. So here, if you look at the first example, it says sys.srd. That's the number of that artifact. And then we identify the requirement as being sys.srd.x, whatever the number you want it to be. And then its children are x.1, x.2. So you can see how you would use that then to help you trace back to knowing what document you were in immediately. So again, that's something we found is very, very useful. So you don't have to walk the tree to figure out what document you're in. A lot of people want to have a direct link, and you can do that as well. You can always create a relationship between all of them and see all of it, but that gets to be very complicated and gets you into some trouble in terms of being able to see the information in other views, like a spider diagram. If you've got all these requirements linked to each other, let's say 10,000, now you put that in a spider diagram, all you see it at the same level, then now you're going to get really confused quickly. You're not going to find what you're looking for. So the reason we do decomposition is to help you organize the information. That's part of the requirements management, is to properly organize the information so it's easy to access and easy to work with enough that you can get your head wrapped around it, and also so you don't blow out the memory of the tool you're using. so you can do that. If you're not careful, you can try to display too much information on the screen, and there's only so much information that's available, and in terms of memory in the computer. So again, there are real world physical limitations to what you can visualize, as well as what the information set you need is. So again, use this approach to help you understand that difference between the higher level and lower level documents and how you're going to use them. Another thing to be careful about is not duplicating requirements. I was on one program, a very large program, back in the 2010, 2000s to 2010-ish timeframe, and they were developing the requirements, and they had a requirement that would go to certain vehicles but not to others. And what they did was, instead of just saying, I'm going to allocate that requirement to that vehicle, they made a duplicate requirement, essentially, except putting the name of the vehicle in there. Well, of course, that causes your requirements bloat. So again, that's a bad management. That's a bad practice. But it's common, particularly when you're working with spreadsheets, because that's the easy way to track things and understand what's going on, as opposed to using these relationships and this relational database to help you connect the information together that way. So again, hopefully that's a good little tip for you. So another thing we've been doing is we've been using AI for quite some time in Innoslate. Back, gosh, almost near the beginning of the tool, we were using AI NLP, natural language processing. We use that for the quality score, particularly. We also used it for requirements traceability assistant, and also for some heuristics. Those are still in the tool and still very valuable, and they've been updated fairly recently, actually. Particularly the quality score has been upgraded in the last couple of years to match the INCOSE guide for what makes a good requirement. So that was done, again, a bit ago. We did update it recently. Like somebody had said, somebody had accidentally decided that you could make all the quality score, 100% by the automation, and that's not very feasible. So we made sure there was a couple of those that we now only allow finally a human to say, yes, that's correct or not. So again, AI is here as an aid to help us. It cannot replace what we do as systems engineers, not completely. So it can help us do a better job, but just not do our job for us. So don't worry, you still have a job. Anyway, generative AI has come in, and people are all excited about it, and it does provide some exciting things. These are some of the AI features we just added recently in January to the cloud version, in February for the enterprise version. And so if you're not on 4.11, you don't have access to these features. Now, by the way, a lot of people are very concerned about generative AI. Is my information going back to the general cloud and being used by other people? Particularly your intellectual property is a concern. Obviously, people with classified systems are worried about classified information leaking. And obviously, nobody wants that. Well, maybe people who want our information want that, but we don't want that, right? So we want to make sure that we've made that secure. So we are subscribing to two other, besides OpenAI, we're subscribing to two other more secure platforms. One is Ask Sage, and the other is Azure OpenAI. If you use our open cloud, which is meant for open information, you are getting OpenAI. So again, there is some feedback that goes back to the mothership for them. But these other ones, if you're interested, we can do that organization by organization. So if you have your own accounts at Ask Sage or Azure OpenAI, we can make that available to you. Okay, so we can make it so you can do that and use that for yourself. Okay. We're going to go through a number of these, so I'm not going to belabor them right here. Again, tips for collaboration. Now, Innoslate was designed as a collaborative tool. That's one of the things that we think was the hallmark of what we did, particularly starting with cloud computing, being a cloud native tool. Collaboration was what really has blossomed the entire software development industry. We need to do more of that in the systems engineering industry. But if you're still stuck with a desktop tool, you're not really doing collaboration. Even the ones that store data in the cloud, that's just a data storage and you're checking in, checking it out. You're not collaborating completely in the sense of you're not working concurrently on the same database at the same time, which is how real collaboration works. So you want that feature in it, and we provide that capability. Now, one of the things about that, though, is when we first did that, we thought everybody wanted to collaborate, right? But we also realized that there are a lot of people want to hide certain pieces of information, right? Particularly to protect their intellectual property and need to know what is it that people can do. So we created something called cross-project relationships to enable that capability. And so you can have information in different projects, and the project then can be shared with whoever you want that project shared with. If you use that cross-project data in another project, only the people who have access to the original project will see the information. Everybody else will get a redaction bar. So that makes us, again, a very unique tool for this. I don't know anybody else in the field that's doing that. So that's a really key thing for protecting your information as well as collaborating. Now, by the way, if you are working in Innoslate and you're looking at something, a particular object, well then you know what? There'll be if somebody else is looking at the same object, there'll be a little indicator there to show you that somebody is looking at that object. They have it open, they're working with it. That's no matter what view you were in or anybody else is in. It's looking at the object level. Another thing you can do once you see that indicator and it's somebody you don't know what they're doing and you're wondering why are they messing with the thing you're working on because you were assigned it, right? Again, that's part of management. Then you can have a private chat with them or a group chat if need be to get together and talk with the users. So that's built in also in the Slate, the chat capability. Okay, so enough slides. I mean, frankly, slides get boring, right? So let's get into the actual demo itself. By the way, again, this was in our new presentation view. If you're not familiar with it, it gives you much of the capabilities of PowerPoint, but it keeps it within the tool, and what that lets you do is also share diagrams and other things directly into it. So let me just show that very briefly, because this will help you again and work with the information you have and curate your requirements. So you can also curate documents here too. So you could identify a document you want to associate with different things in your presentation for your requirements management. You can actually describe your whole requirements management process in a more visual way for your stakeholders. So this is a great way to do, yes, requirements management is everywhere, right? So, okay, so let's get into a more fun project. It's more complete. So this again is Innoslate. If you're not familiar with at a project level, specific project one, again, for those who aren't familiar with Innoslate, there's a concept of an organization where you can have multiple projects. And since I'm the administrator of the project, I can see all the projects in my organization. So highly recommend you, if you need this access, you ask for your administrator of your organization. Let's go back to the project itself. Again, I'm just doing a quick link to the project. So here is a project that's pretty well fleshed out as a demo project, and we'd like to use this as an example. That way, if we mess something up, we don't do any damage to a real project, because we use this ourselves all the time for real projects. So this is not, to us, this is not theoretical. We are using this all the time. So again, for requirements management, very often what you'll do is import requirements. Maybe you're bringing it in from a spreadsheet. So we have a nice Excel importer for that capability. Maybe from another database that's you're migrating from an old requirements database to a new one, and that does the export for RECF. We have a RECF import and export capability, so you can go back and forth with that if you want to. Again, hopefully that's not the direction you're going. You usually migrate one way or the other. Of course, if you have a PDF or a Word document, if you have a PDF, we recommend saving it as Word and making sure that it apply the word style headings correctly. And then you can import that document very cleanly. It brings in pictures and tables and everything you need. So again, to manage the requirement set, because again, a lot of times you're going to get things from other places. I know when I start a project, oftentimes, particularly if I do a high-level architecture project, I'm starting with policies that have information or procedural documents like tactics, techniques, and procedures that I might want to use it and bring into the tool from an outside source. So this is maybe the first place I start, is bring that information in so I can manage all the information directly as objects and make them traceable to where I want them to be traced to. So once you have a document, we have all different types of documents. And of course, you can create your own document here from scratch. We have templates available for these things as well, but you can create any kind of document you need here. So again, as part of your whole management plan, maybe you have a requirements management plan you want to create, you can create that in Innoslate too. You don't have to have that as an external document. It can be all part of your overall database, and you can even track and make sure you're doing the things you want to do with it. Lots of different requirements documents. This happens to be a mission requirements document. And because I know that, because I have MR, mission requirements. That was the mnemonic I used for this. So I know that. I can always go back and look at, well, actually the easiest thing is click on it and look for relationships. So remember we said source of, source by. So source by the artifact, and here's my artifact, it's MR. So if I click on that, that'll take me directly to that object. And we can see where we got it from, all the other metadata information here. It's a requirements document. That's what's shown in the label here. By the way, these labels for the type of document are what allow us to filter and see the different document types in Documents View. Okay, so again, here's your requirements. Again, if I'm doing analysis, I would use the analytical tools here, but let's talk more about just the management part of it. So here I'm going to track the status of it. look at the quality score. Obviously, if people are doing analysis, you can see where we are in that process. I can even sort and filter on type. So I'm going to pick just my performance requirements, and that's the filter of that. I can clear the label filter, and it gives me all of them back. There's a hierarchy over here. You can move see if you grab this. I can move, maybe I want the budget to be up here. And so now I've moved it up there. So now if I look at it, that's where the budget is. So again, you can manage the organization of the requirements as well here, just by dragging and dropping. And that can, of course, really help you if you got a very large document. You can easily move the information more quickly down that, rather than trying to grab here, as some tools do, and try to drag it way down the document. That can take you a while. If you've ever tried to do that in Word, where you've grabbed a paragraph and you move it down to a large document, you're sitting there scrolling for quite a while. That's not a lot of fun. Okay, other management features here, particularly baselining. Baselines are very important to be able to create. So that's right here. You would just select the baseline. And then when you create a baseline, let's see, I have no baselines in this one, so let's create one. Go to that baseline, and we're going to call that V1. It's going to annotate the name that's already there, plus whatever version number or what you want to add to it. If you want to sign it, you can generate a signature or draw it. I'm terrible. You can see I'm a terrible artist, so if I tried to draw it, it'd look like that. So that's not very good. Let's do this. And you can put, you know, who you are or what you are, title. And then that puts it in here that way. And I can save it. So that gives me my version, and I can go back to that version, and I see the signature, when it was signed, the date, time. So it captures all that metadata for me about when I baselined the document. Now, by the way, you notice as an owner, if I make a mistake, I can delete the baseline or edit the baseline as I need to. So again, as the owner of the project, I have that privilege. Unless I delegate that privilege to someone else, like my configuration manager, I would be the only one who could do that. Okay, so that's again a control we have over the management of the document. Another thing you may be interested in is status tracking. So if we look at the status, and I think let's see if I got this here. There we go. And I don't have the status column showing, so I want to see that. Let's add that here as display options. So just search for status. Requirement status, of course, is what I want. Apply. And now I get a scroll bar, and here's my status in review. Now, of course, again, I can also adjust the view this way. Now, by the way, each of these views are set up individually. So if you have this set up and you want everybody to see it that way, you need to let them know how to do that. That's simply go to the wrench, display options, and put the columns they want on the, or if you want to, if you have just something you always want to see as a document, you show it in paper mode. So let's just see what that looks like. Apply it here. So there it looks like more like a regular document. Very simple, very clean. Now I do have to, when I do that, I've got to then make sure I take it off there, and it remembers what I had for my columns. So I apply that to come back to where I was. Okay. So another management thing, again, you could track and see that the relationships have been established that you want, S, T, and V. So we have satisfied by, traced to, and verified by. So I click on that, I go to those relationships. by the way, one of the nice things is active. So it shows what relationships have been established. So you can just quickly filter and get those. So here's my satisfied by, traced to, and I don't have a verified by, so it's not been assigned at this level. So that's probably okay because mission requirements may, well, actually, mission requirements would be verified at my operational testing level. So I would want that verification requirement to be my test case. So gosh, let's think about that. What are we going to do? Well, I want to build that test case. So how do I do that? Let me see here. If I click on this, I go to the more, I have a generate test case. So let's do that. So here it gives the information about it. If there was a parent, it would actually add the parent information as well to give it context. You can add more here. If you're into prompt engineering and you want to add some more for the AI to look at and think about, have at it. Well, let's just do this one. Hit next. And it's built me a test case. So initializing the system with configurations for wildfire detection, simulate a series of wildfire scenarios with varying dimensions. Again, these are things that make a lot of sense to go do, but obviously there's a lot of work here, but at least sets that up for me. So now if I create that, I now have a new relationship for verified by. And I can go to that test case, and here it is. Now I have lots of extra attributes have been added to this particular thing, so it's kind of funny to see all the extra stuff. So anyway, so you can add your setup here as well. Again, as you are developing it, you'll have your actual result. You can also make this part of a test suite. So right now it isn't associated with test suite. So I would want to add that capability. So I would want to have maybe a decompose as a parent. And so let me create a, I guess with this, if I want to put in the artifact, I've got to go to create the artifact first. So that's not the relationship I want. I want sourced by, there we go. And so picking that, then I can create artifact, which is my operational test suite. And with that, I would want, that's probably good enough to get that for now. And then I can go to it and make sure, let's find a test suite. Okay, so you make it a test suite. Okay, now when I save it, I can come over here to my test center and I have the operational test suite. And that's interesting. I thought we'd have the source in here. So let me just find where that goes. Okay, this is user error, add existing entity. And we're going to find that, let's see. I'll have to go find it. Anyway, so you'd add it here to it. I'm not sure why I didn't add it automatically in that situation, but I'll double check what I did wrong. Anyway, so ultimately you have all of what you need together to create the information and connect it together. Now again, notice we had baselined. So in part of the requirements management, it turned yellow here to indicate that it has changed since the last baseline, because adding that verification requirement, or I'm sorry, that verification test case, then it did make a change to this, so an important change actually. By the way, notice also it added this label here, test. So rather than being just a performance requirement, now I have test. So I can now filter on the items that are being tested. And if it was by inspection, by the way, that it would show up by inspection. There's a lot of different ways you might see, things being done. So in terms of that, there's test cases. Another thing I can do here with this, another option I have is generating risks. So I can associate my risks here as well. So let me go find some risks. And so it comes up with a list of 5 to start with. You can pick 3 out of the 5 to have it generate. And then, of course, you can run it again if you want all of them. But it's best to start with the 3 and look and see if you're happy with them. Now, by the way, notice when we generate these, we're giving you the ability to edit them before they become live. So you actually have the ability then to change these things if you need to right here. But here's a good example now. It's identifying a cost risk associated with this one. You see that by the risk label. It does suggest in the text of the description a mitigation approach. Okay, so this you might, we have a mitigated by relationship, so you could create it there instead of having it here. So again, depending how you want to use it, but this is what we did for this version of it. I'll change that in the future. But anyway, so that's something that's available as well. Again, here's a technical risk that was identified, and sometimes another technical risk. So it's 2 technical risks. Again, sometimes I'll get it's cost, schedule, or technical risks are the ones that usually will identify. So really cool. It really helps you, again, tracking your risk management as well, because risk is part of requirements management too, right? You're having to generate the risks and making sure you can track them, part of your management process. Let's see. Another thing is workflow. You can set up workflow. Workflow is set up here in the schema editor. So here's my requirement workflow, and I would identify I have the different status steps, and then I have who can be notified. Notice it can be a team. So I could have my software team as part of this, or whatever is the appropriate group, and then have them in different phases. So as you do this, the workflow gets applied to the document. And let's go back to the document again. And so that's how I have the ability to only go to certain steps. From in review, I can only go to approved and rejected. So again, the workflow is another management technique that you're going to probably be interested in if you're really very big on workflow management. One other thing I want to point out is oftentimes you want to version things in a different way, and you want to be able to make some changes, test to see if those changes are the ones you want before you make them, right? So a couple of things you can do there. First of all, a reviewer can suggest changes and add comments. So that's one option. But also, if you're trying to get a whole new kind of version of it, something going, like, let's say I'm building a standard, or I'm building a procedural standard for my company, and I want to be able to have different versions of it. So I create a version, and then I want in the future to make a new one. What I would do is use the branching and forking capability for that. That capability is here in project version control. So select project version control, and you would start from the model you have, and you can pick whether you want it to be a branch or a fork. Now, the idea of branching is you're going to branch it, and because you're planning to merge it back into the trunk. Forking means I'm starting with something totally new. I'm not going to ever merge it back. The other is just the way it is. So again, those are the 2 different ones to let you work with it, how you want to manage the information. So again, check that out more. We have a lot more details on the website for that. So I wanted to leave enough time for questions. There's many more features, obviously, in the tool. Many things you can apply it to, but I want to make sure we left a little time for questions. So, Taylor, are there any questions yet?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Dan. If you haven't done so, please send your questions through the panel on the right that pops up after clicking Q&A on the top bar. If you're interested in having our team help you streamline your requirements management using Innoslate, contact our sales team. You can reach our team by email at sales@innoslate.com or through our website, specinnovations.com/contact-us. We've received several questions already. We'll answer as many as we can before our time is up. First question is, you mentioned the lifecycle modeling language. Where can we get more information on it?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So it's at lifecyclemodeling.org. This is a not-for-profit company. It is not, we're not directly affiliated. We're a sponsor, but we're not, it's not a direct thing. And if you want to get the spec itself, it's over here in resources. So you click LML specification. LML 2.0 was just released and is available now. So you can download it in the PDF. There is also access to a digital version of it. So you can actually use it digitally, and that's a new capability that we're just putting out there, and other organizations, standards organizations, are looking at using this. Also, highly recommend, if you want to hear more about it, come to MBSE Con. It's a hybrid conference, so if you haven't signed up already, and I know you couldn't get there, maybe unless you live in Orlando, you probably wouldn't want to try to go there in person, but certainly the hybrid option is still available. And we actually have a very good hybrid option using Cvent. So Cvent is one of the premier conference management tools out there. So I think you'll find that it's very valuable use of your time. Okay, other questions?
Yeah, this attendee isn't sure if they missed it, but asked if you could demo the traceability matrix.
Oh yes, I missed it. I missed it. You didn't. So that's a good one. So in the traceability matrix, so whenever you're in any object, and I can just pick this mission requirement I was in. So let me just go to that. There's a little arrow here that says go to it. I could then open, in any view I'm in, I have this option open, and that's the spider diagram. And there's the traceability matrix. So again, I could see what my matrix is for that. So, and again, I don't have anything specifically here, but so let's pick one I know I have. Let's go to my test center again. And now I have my verification requirements, so, and my test cases. So I want to see how those are connected to each other. That I had already set up, so it's here. And the way you do that is you can pick it hierarchically, a query, or just what's already related. So let me do a query instead. We're going to use the order by number and then number vr.star. And I'm going to look at verified by. I'm wrong one. When in doubt, make a mistake. That's not a problem. Just hit verifies. There we go. That brings that up. And so there's some interesting things that came in here. So I would probably refine my query to eliminate this R3. I'm not sure where this came from. Looks like someone make a duplicate or something with it. Anyway, demo projects are fun. And so these are the relationships that have been established. Here's where your traceability assist comes into play. And so this is showing you there's a good connection between the name, number, description information between the verification requirement and the test case. Many of the others, there's also suspect assist. You see a lot of red. Well, that's because if you look at this one, particularly the verification requirement has information, but the LIGTAC test has nothing about it in there. So that makes you wonder, do I really want that test there or not? Maybe I click that off then, because I don't want that to show, to be there, to be that relationship. Now, it is part of the helium tank expansion the appropriate markings is part of that. And then again, you have to decide if it's really at a sub-level or not. So again, how you want to manage it is up to you. But put the information in the description field and it'll help you do a better job of that with it. And so the other thing you can, of course, do always for traceability is the spider diagram. So if I open a spider diagram, go back to what I have here, cancel, scope changes. And if I go again, select this item. Oh, I clicked on the diagram. Of course, you see the diagrams. This is part of embedding the diagrams of things. But I always, any view I'm in, I still can get to my other diagrams and other views. So let's go to the spider diagram for it. So this is the spider diagram for that same object that we were looking at here, that system acceptance test case. It's showing me my test cases. It shows the test team connection. So traceability, as I said, is more than just requirements to something. It's everything to everything. So it really puts, but again, it ties you back to my verification requirement, and the verification requirement here is related to the originating requirement. Again, that hierarchical relates to relationship you're seeing here that we talked about earlier being used. You can double click on these and they'll give you the opposite way as well. I don't know if you can see that or not. Went from related to relates. Kind of hard to see at this size. So you can always increase the size and make it big, or you can make it all the way down to nothing and anything in between. So again, if you pick a number, I can just type in a number here and do a 50%. So again, very nice in terms of that traceability. You have the ability to, with this one, decide whether you want all relationships, traceability relationships, or any other set of relationships you want to choose. So this lets you work with the relationships and the information you're trying to get to and use it as effectively as you can. Okay, any other questions?
How do you handle determining duplicate requirements? Does your tool search automatically for matching sentences and/or keywords?
So in fact, we have the ability in Intelligence View to do just that. That's one of the heuristics in the Intelligence View, is looking for similar names, not just duplicate names, but similar names. So this will find things that maybe duplicates or maybe not. For example, here I've got two final orbit radii here. So is that the same thing? If I determine they are, and again, I can hyperlink to each one, take a look, come back. I can always fix it then once I'm happy by merging them together. If I say those do belong together, then they'll merge them. And it does a smart merge with it. Also, by the way, here is another requirements analysis tool looking at specific things or heuristics for another thing that makes it a better requirement as well. So did that answer the question?
Let us know in the comments. You mentioned that requirements, derivation, and analysis represent much of what is done in systems engineering. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, so the way I, again, look at systems engineering is it's all about requirements. So even people are very enamored with the model-based systems engineering, which is great, but the purpose of those diagrams were to help us derive requirements and understand what the requirements were, or analyze the requirements. In particular, the functional requirements are analyzed by things like the action diagram, or if you prefer the SysML activity diagram, you would just select that. Or if you'd rather use the model at IDEF 0. Okay, so again, we don't care. It's how you want to view the information and work with it. From that information, requirements can be derived, and we actually have a tool for doing that in the asset diagram, and it results in a system requirements document, which is based on that diagram. So I'm going to go to that diagram in a minute to show how I generated it. But what it generates is this document, which is pretty detailed, and it will create the requirements for you from the information in your models. So let's see if I can find a good one requirement that was generated. So the fireside system shall perform state transition action context. So that's an action diagram. This one right there that created. Let's go on down and find something a little more interesting. Okay, control. Here we go. So have a capacity. So this is talking about the interface requirements that was pulled off a conduit. So again, this helps you derive those requirements from your models. So if you can't do that, then it makes it a little tough. Can I go directly? Yeah. So if I click on that diagram, it brings me to the model that I started from. And to create that SRD, I use this generate SRD. And if I did it again, because I've updated the models, it'll update, baseline that document and update it for you automatically. So pretty useful. And by the way, if you're wondering what goes in each paragraph, there's a little lightning bolt here that gives you that information. It's a pop-up. It says that the name, number, and of the master asset is automatically entered here. So that's what's here. And then you can continue the paragraph there by adding your own text. And if you add the text there and you baseline and it comes back with additional information, it will update it for you. Okay? Did that answer that question? Good enough?
I think so. That looks like all the questions we have for today. We would like to thank you again for joining us. As a reminder, we'll be following up with you very soon to send you a link to the recording and the presentation slide deck. We hope you can join us for next month's webinar, Bringing Clarity to Complex Systems with Innoslate with Dr. Dam on Tuesday, May 20th. Your link to sign up will be in the email that is coming soon to your mailbox with the slides and recording. We also encourage you to visit our website and our blog, as well as connect with us on social media. That concludes today's presentation. Have a wonderful day, and we hope to see you at our next webinar.